The mountain did not speak, and yet it heard everything. Long before maps gave it a name, before borders carved the land into kingdoms, there stood a towering peak at the center of an isolated valley. The people who lived in its shadow called it simply the Witness. It rose higher than any other mountain in the region, its surface unnaturally smooth in places, as if polished by unseen hands. Travelers avoided it, hunters refused to climb it, and yet the small civilization that formed at its base built its entire existence around one terrifying belief: the mountain knew when you lied. At first it was dismissed as superstition. The earliest settlers recorded strange phenomena in fragmented journals. A man accused of theft swore his innocence at the foot of the mountain, only for a deep tremor to ripple through the valley moments later. These incidents were rare, unpredictable, and easily explained away by coincidence. But over time, patterns began to emerge. The tremors came only after spoken falsehoods. The landslides occurred only when deception carried weight. The mountain, it seemed, did not punish small lies. It responded to lies that altered reality itself, falsehoods that could change decisions. Within a generation, fear turned into doctrine. The rulers of the valley, seeing opportunity in belief, formalized the power of the mountain into law. Courts were built facing the peak. Trials ended with a single moment, the accused standing before the mountain, speaking their truth aloud. If the ground remained still, they were declared innocent. If it trembled, guilt was undeniable. No evidence required, no argument necessary. Crime vanished almost entirely. Merchants conducted business without contracts. Leaders were chosen based on public declarations of honesty. The valley prospered in a way neighboring regions could not understand. Trust became currency. Truth became law. And the mountain remained silent, watching. But silence has a cost. As the civilization grew, so did its dependence on the Witness. People stopped questioning each other. They stopped investigating, stopped doubting, stopped thinking critically. Why would they, when the mountain could decide? The concept of hidden truth began to disappear. There was only what was spoken, and what the mountain confirmed. This was the first fracture. A philosopher, known only in surviving texts as unravel, began to challenge the system. He argued that truth was more complicated than spoken words, that intent mattered, that silence itself could be a form of deception. He warned that the mountain did not reveal truth, it only reacted to lies. At first he was ignored. Then he was summoned. In a public assembly attended by thousands, unravel was ordered to stand before the mountain and declare his claims false. If he lied, the mountain would react, proving him wrong. If it remained silent, his challenge would stand. He spoke calmly, clearly, with no hesitation. "My words are untrue." The valley held its breath. The mountain did not move. For the first time in recorded history, silence created doubt. The rulers quickly dismissed the event, claiming the philosopher had manipulated language, that the mountain could not be deceived but perhaps misunderstood. Unravel was exiled that same day, his teachings banned, his writings burned. But the damage had already been done. People began to experiment. Small lies were tested in private. Half-truths, carefully worded statements, omissions disguised as honesty. Some triggered tremors, others did not. The pattern was no longer clear. What had once been absolute began to blur. Then came the second fracture. A high-ranking official, one of the most trusted voices in the kingdom, was accused of secretly redirecting resources for personal gain. In the court, before the entire council, he denied the accusation with unwavering confidence. The mountain remained silent. He was declared innocent. Months later, hidden records were uncovered, undeniable proof of his corruption. The revelation spread like wildfire. If the mountain had failed once, it could fail again. And if it could fail, then everything built upon it was unstable. Trust began to erode. Not all at once, not visibly, but in quiet conversations, in glances between merchants, in the hesitation before agreements. The certainty that had defined the civilization started to dissolve. The rulers reacted with force. New laws were introduced. Stricter trials, multiple declarations, repeated statements before the mountain to confirm consistency. The more the system tightened, the more fragile it became. People learned to navigate it, to speak in ways that avoided triggering the mountain while still concealing truth. Language itself became a weapon. And then the lies grew larger. Entire trade agreements were built on carefully constructed deceptions. Leaders began manipulating public statements to maintain power. Even the courts, once sacred, became stages for performance rather than truth. The mountain still reacted, but inconsistently, or perhaps more accurately, it reacted to something deeper than words, something the people no longer understood. The High Council gathered every leader, every official, every figure of authority, and brought them before the mountain. One by one, they were commanded to speak a single sentence: "I have never deceived the people." It was meant to cleanse the system, to reset trust, to prove that those in power were still worthy. The first spoke. Silence. The second spoke. A faint tremor. The third spoke. The ground shifted beneath their feet. The mountain began to roar. What followed was not punishment. It was collapse. The earth fractured across the valley. Buildings crumbled. The carefully constructed city that had stood for generations was torn apart in minutes. The mountain did not stop. It responded to every lie spoken, every truth twisted, every silence that concealed reality, every system that replaced understanding with blind faith. When it ended, the valley was unrecognizable. Survivors scattered, carrying fragments of what had happened, stories that would evolve into myths, then into warnings. The mountain remained, as it always had, unchanged in form, silent once more. But its meaning had shifted. It was never a judge, never a guardian of truth. It did not reveal what was real. It only reacted to distortion, unpredictably, imperfectly, without context or mercy. The civilization had not been destroyed because it lied. It was destroyed because it stopped understanding what truth actually was. And in the end, the most dangerous lie they ever believed was that something else could define it for them.